On a quiet winter evening in the little mountain town of Brightwood, a single act of kindness would change 3 lives forever. But no one knew it yet. A shelf stalker named Jenna Carter was just trying to hold her life together, juggling bills, caring for her sick mother, and moving through the world with a tenderness people often mistook for weakness. Then, under the harsh fluorescent lights of a noisy supermarket aisle, she heard the kind of cry a mother never forgets. The sound of a child drowning in a world too loud to bear. What happened next would lead her to a frightened little girl, a grieving father, and a loyal German shepherd who seemed to understand hearts better than humans ever could. Before the story begins, tell me, where are you watching from tonight? Leave a comment below, and may your day be gentle, peaceful, and blessed with a little kindness of its own. On a quiet winter evening in the little mountain town of Brightwood, a single act of kindness would change 3 lives forever. But no one knew it yet. A shelf stalker named Jenna Carter was just trying to hold her life together, juggling bills, caring for her sick mother, and moving through the world with a tenderness people often mistook for weakness. Then, under the harsh fluorescent lights of a noisy supermarket aisle, she heard the kind of cry a mother never forgets. The sound of a child drowning in a world too loud to bear. What happened next would lead her to a frightened little girl, a grieving father, and a loyal German shepherd who seemed to understand hearts better than humans ever could. Before the story begins, tell me, where are you watching from tonight? Leave a comment below, and may your day be gentle, peaceful, and blessed with a little kindness of its own. The cold evening deepened outside Brightmart, as though the sky itself were bracing for the storm that Jenna Carter did not yet know was coming for her life. When she stepped out of the sliding doors, carrying a small cardboard box containing her uniform, a chipped mug, and a photo of her mother and brother, the frigid air bit instantly at her cheeks. The parking lot was dim, bathed in the tired glow of amber lamps flickering from an aging electrical grid. Cars whispered past on the distant highway, and pine boughs swayed overhead like restless sentinels. Inside, Officer Eli Rowan held Maddie tightly against his chest. He looked drained, shoulders slumped, jaw tight, his normally steady breath shallow. His daughter was safe, yes, but something in him had been hollowed by the fear of losing her just minutes earlier. Ranger, the German Shepherd K9, padded close beside him, posture low, his instincts reading every tiny tremor in Eli's shaking exhale. Eli had faced armed confrontations, winter rescues, even a hostage negotiation in his early career, but nothing terrified him more than the idea of his daughter disappearing in a world that did not understand her. Maddie nestled under his chin, her breath warm against his neck. Her stuffed wolf dangled loosely from her small hand, its fur damp with tears. "She's okay," Eli whispered to himself, though his voice cracked. "She's okay. Thanks to her." His gaze drifted to the entrance where Jenna had vanished into the break room moments earlier. As he stood in the lobby holding Maddie, a middle-aged employee named Tom Berkeley shuffled nearby. Tom was a thin, wiry man in his 50s with a graying mustache and half-moon glasses perpetually sliding down his nose. He had worked part-time at Brightmart for over a decade, mostly in produce, mostly unnoticed. Tom had the tired kindness of someone who had lived through too many quiet disappointments and learned to survive by keeping his head down. But Tom had seen what happened in aisle 12. He walked over, clearing his throat. "Officer Rowan, sir, what she did, Jenna, she did right by that little girl." Eli nodded. "I know." "Deborah?" Tom's voice dipped as though the name itself were sour. "She's been looking for a reason to fire someone. Doesn't matter why." Ranger huffed, sensing tension. Eli ran a hand over Maddie's back. "Thank you for telling me," he said quietly. Tom looked away, guilt pressing into his expression. "I should have said something earlier, but folks here, they're scared of Deborah. We all need the paycheck." Eli understood. Fear made cowards out of good people, and sometimes bravery looked like simply telling the truth. Outside, the wind picked up, brushing through the parking lot. Eli pushed the door open and stepped out just in time to see Jenna crossing toward her old sedan, a faded sky blue car from the early 2000s with mismatched hubcaps and a soft rattle that betrayed its age. She held her box close to her chest, like it shielded her from the world. Maddie, still in Eli's arms, lifted her head. Daddy, she's leaving. Jenna didn't hear them, too focused on unlocking her car with trembling hands. Eli hesitated only a moment before walking toward her. Ranger trotted beside him, his heavy paws crunching softly over gravel. Jenna! The call startled her. She turned, eyes shimmering with exhaustion. Up close, Eli saw the bruise of grief beneath her calm expression. Grief not of losing a job, but grief of being punished for doing something good. You didn't deserve that, Eli said softly. Not even a little. Maddie squirmed, reaching for Jenna with small hands. Jenna's expression softened as she gently touched Maddie's arm. Hey, sweetheart. You help me breathe, Maddie whispered. Ranger leaned forward, sniffing Jenna's coat sleeve, tail sweeping low in a gesture of approval. He sensed sincerity, sensed the warmth in her heartbeat. He always understood people that way. Jenna looked down at him and smiled faintly. You're a good boy, aren't you? Eli exhaled, the cold air spiraling visibly. Jenna, I can't pretend I understand everything Maddie goes through. I try. I really do. But you walked in and understood her in minutes. Jenna shook her head. I just did what anyone should do. But no one else did, Eli replied. Those words hung heavy in the still air. A sudden clang echoed from the loading dock near the back of the building. A young man, Dennis Hoover, the evening stock assistant, was shoving a dumpster closed. Dennis was in his early 20s, tall and broad-shouldered, with thick blonde hair shaved close on the sides. He had a reputation for being irresponsible, but good-hearted, the kind of guy who stumbled through life but laughed his way out of trouble. Tonight, however, his face was flushed with anger. He jogged over, wiping grease from his palms. Jenna, he called, breathless. What Deborah did? Total garbage. She just had it out for you. I saw the whole thing. Jenna forced a small smile. Thanks, Dennis. It's okay? No, it's not, he huffed. You help people. She pushes buttons. His jaw tightened with the moral outrage only 20-year-olds and philosophers carried. Then he spotted Ranger and took a step back. Whoa, that dog is huge. Eli gave a reassuring nod. He's harmless unless you're a criminal. Dennis blanched. Ranger lifted one brow as though insulted at being misunderstood. Jenna hugged the box closer. Thank you, Dennis. Really. Dennis lingered a moment longer before heading back inside, muttering curses about Deborah under his breath. The moment he disappeared, Eli turned to Jenna. I don't want this to be the end of what you did today, he said. I meant it earlier. Maddie needs someone like you, and so do I. Jenna blinked, startled. Officer Rowan? Eli, he corrected gently. Please, call me Eli. Something unspoken passed between them. Recognition, maybe, or the beginning of trust. Jenna, I'd like to offer you a job. Her lips parted in confusion. A job? Yes, Eli said. To help Maddie, to be with her in overwhelming situations, to help her develop strategies, to help me understand her better. Maddie tugged Jenna's sleeve, her voice a whisper. Please stay with us. The plea pierced Jenna's heart, but fear flickered behind her expression. I don't have certifications, she said. No degrees. I only have lived experience. Sometimes lived experience is what matters the most, Eli replied. I can teach a recruit how to shoot or drive a cruiser, but no one can teach empathy. You have that. Maddie needs that. Ranger barked once, as if seconding the offer. Jenna froze, torn between disbelief and a strange rising hope. The cold wind tugged at the ends of her braid as she looked down at the child who trusted her, and the father who looked at her like she'd brought a miracle into his world. She swallowed. I need a night to think. Of course, Eli said quickly, relief softening his features. Take as much time as you need. Just know. We'd be grateful to have you. Jenna nodded, hugging her box close again. She stepped toward her car, unlocked the door, and slid inside. Eli stood watching as she started the engine. Maddie pressed her face into Eli's neck. Daddy, will she come back? Eli looked out at the fading taillights, the cold wind tugging at his coat. I hope so, baby, he whispered. I really hope so. Ranger sat beside him, posture straight, eyes following the car until it turned onto the main road and disappeared. He let out a low, thoughtful whine, the kind he used when he sensed a path fate wanted them to follow. Eli scratched behind the dog's ear. "Yeah, boy," he murmured. "I feel it too." And the three of them, father, daughter, dog, stood beneath the dim amber lights, waiting for a tomorrow they didn't yet know would change everything. The moon was already climbing above the jagged line of pine-covered hills when Jenna Carter drove home that night, her old sedan rattling faintly along the narrow road leading into the edge of Brightwood. The mountains loomed like dark, ancient guardians, their silhouettes trembling in the wind. The air was sharp, cold enough to sting her skin even through the car windows, and frost glittered across the roadside grass. Jenna's apartment sat in a small, aging complex called Cedar Ridge. 3 squat buildings painted a shade of beige that had long surrendered to weather. She parked beneath a flickering street lamp and stepped out, holding the cardboard box from Brightmart tight against her chest. She wasn't crying, not outwardly, but inside, something soft was bending under the weight of the day. Her mother's voice, gentle, always tired, echoed in her memory. "Doing the right thing isn't always the thing that keeps you safe, honey, but it's still the right thing." As Jenna walked toward her building, she didn't notice the elderly neighbor sitting on the bench outside until she nearly passed her. Mrs. Harriet Lowell, a woman in her late 70s, lifted her head. She was small and bird-like, with thin silver hair pinned into an elegant bun, and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. Her old green knitted shawl was wrapped tightly around her narrow shoulders. She had once been a school teacher, kind, strict, with a mind that remained razor-sharp despite her age. She had known Jenna for 3 years and saw more than Jenna wished anyone to see. "You're home early?" Harriet observed. Her voice carried a faint rasp, the kind belonging to someone who had spent a lifetime projecting her words across classrooms. "And you're carrying your things?" Jenna froze, forcing a wobbly smile. "Yeah, I was let go today." Harriet's eyes hardened with fury that didn't match her size. "Let go?" she repeated, as if the phrase itself insulted her. "For what, dear? Saving a child's life?" Jenna blinked in surprise. "How did you—" "We live in a small town," Harriet said simply. "Word spreads." She patted the empty space on the bench beside her. "Sit. Let an old woman mother you for a minute." Jenna hesitated, then sat. Harriet studied her face the way she once studied students' essays, with precision, care, and the ability to read what wasn't written. "You did something brave today, Jenna," she said, "and courage always upsets cowards." A laugh escaped Jenna, soft and rueful. "I don't feel brave." "Of course not," Harriet replied. "Brave people rarely do." Wind brushed the trees above them, humming softly through branches. Harriet squeezed her arm gently. "Go inside, dear. Get some rest. Tomorrow will look different." Jenna hugged her box of belongings and whispered, "I hope so." Inside her apartment, the quiet felt heavy. The living room was small with secondhand furniture, a stack of medical bills on the counter, and a framed photo of her and her younger brother Noah, a boy with bright eyes and a shy smile. Jenna placed her box on the table, sat down, and let exhaustion wash over her. Ranger's warm amber eyes flashed in her mind. Maddie's trembling voice, "You help me breathe." And Eli Rowan's expression, steady, sincere, when he said, "We'd be grateful to have you." She had said she needed a night to think, but her heart already knew. She just needed the courage to admit it. While Jenna wrestled with her thoughts, across town, Officer Eli Rowan sat on the living room floor of his home, helping Maddie arrange her collection of stuffed animals into a quiet circle. The house smelled faintly of the cedarwood candle he always lit on stressful days. Ranger lay with his paws outstretched nearby, ears relaxed but still alert. Maddie, freshly bathed and bundled in her soft pajamas with tiny stars printed across them, placed her stuffed wolf in the middle of the circle. "Daddy?" she asked softly. Eli stroked her hair. "Yeah, sweetheart? Will Jenna come?" "I hope she will," Eli said honestly. "But we have to give her space to choose." "I want her to choose us," Maddie whispered, her voice small. She made the loud parts go quiet. Ranger let out a gentle chuff, as if agreeing. Eli felt a tightening in his chest, not fear this time, but the fragile hope that someone might finally help him bridge the gap between his daughter and the world. Someone who understood Maddie instinctively, the way he had been struggling to do for years. He pressed a kiss to Maddie's forehead. "Let's get you to bed." Ranger followed them down the hall, his nails tapping softly against the wooden floor. The next morning dawned pale and brittle, the mountains dusted with early frost. The air tasted like cold metal, and thin fog rolled across Brightwood like wandering ghosts. Jenna stood at her window, holding a warm mug of tea between trembling hands. She hadn't slept much, but clarity had finally pierced through the storm of doubt. She needed to see Eli. She needed to see Maddie. Not because she felt obligated, but because something about that little girl's trust had reached a place inside Jenna she didn't know was still open. She got dressed in her warmest coat, navy wool with worn cuffs, and tied her hair into a neat braid. Then she grabbed her keys and left. At the Rowan house, Maddie sat at the breakfast table eating toast cut into tiny squares, the only way she would eat crunchy foods. Eli was helping her lace her shoes when Ranger suddenly perked up, head swiveling toward the window. A car engine hummed outside. Ranger barked once sharply, not alarmed, but announcing. "Someone's here?" Eli murmured. Ranger dashed to the door. When Eli opened it, Jenna stood on the porch, cheeks flushed from the cold, breath puffing in little clouds. Her hands were tucked nervously in her coat pockets. "Hi," she said softly. Maddie squealed with pure joy and ran straight to her, throwing small arms around Jenna's waist. Jenna laughed, warmth bursting across her face. She lowered herself to Maddie's level. "Hey, sweetheart, I missed you too." Eli let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Ranger nudged Jenna's hand, tail sweeping enthusiastically. And in that simple greeting, something inside the Rowan home shifted into place. "I've thought about your offer," Jenna said, standing again. I want to do it. I want to help Maddie." Relief washed through Eli so visibly it softened every line in his face. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You don't know what this means." Maddie tugged Jenna's coat sleeve. "Are you staying today?" "If your dad says it's okay," Jenna replied. "It's more than okay," Eli said. "Come in, please." As she stepped inside, love, not romantic yet, but the deep pulling kind that begins with trust, found its first quiet roots. The Rowan house woke slowly that morning, as though it sensed something had shifted even before anyone spoke it aloud. Frost clung to the windows in delicate white veins, and the early sunlight filtered through the pines like warm gold brushing over the edges of a long winter night. Inside, Jenna Carter stood awkwardly near the entryway, still peeling off her coat, unsure where she belonged in this new place that already felt strangely familiar. Maddie clung happily to her side, humming the quiet tune she used to comfort herself, an off-key, soft little melody that reminded Jenna of the wind passing through wooden chimes. Ranger, Eli's loyal German Shepherd K9, patted around Jenna in slow, approving circles. The 4-year-old dog, large and powerfully built, had a coat of black and tan fur that gleamed even in dim light. His strong jaw and broad shoulders contrasted with the gentleness in his eyes that watched Jenna with a sense of ownership, as though he had personally invited her into this home. Officer Eli Rowan stood across the room, leaning against the kitchen counter. His usually composed face showed something softer, relief, gratitude, and a hint of vulnerability that he rarely allowed anyone to see. "I'm glad you're here," he said quietly. "We can take it slow today. Just get comfortable. Learn the routine." Jenna nodded, smoothing a flyaway strand of her braid. "I'd like that." This house was warm, not fancy, just lived in. The living room held mismatched furniture, a soft gray couch, a worn but beloved rug, and books scattered on side tables about child development, trauma, and autism. Eli tried so hard, Jenna realized, harder than he ever admitted. Maddie tugged Jenna's sleeve. "Come see my room. I want to show you the quiet nook." "The quiet nook?" Daddy built it. Ranger helped. Ranger barked once, proud. Maddie led Jenna down the hallway to a small bedroom painted in soft sky blue. A canopy of warm lights hung above the bed, dimmable and gentle. Racks of sensory toys lined the shelves, squishy balls, fidget spinners, textured fabric swatches. In the corner, exactly as Maddie promised, was the quiet nook, a small tent draped with weighted blankets, lined with pillows, stuffed animals, and noise-canceling headphones decorated with glitter stickers. Daddy learned about it from a therapist, Maddie explained. He made it for me after I had a big meltdown 2 years ago. Her voice softened. I couldn't breathe that day. Jenna knelt beside her. And this helps you breathe? Maddie nodded. It makes the world quieter. Jenna smiled. It's perfect. As she spoke, her eyes moved across the room. How everything here was arranged with thought and love. How Eli had built a sanctuary without fully understanding why his daughter needed it, but knowing she did. It made her heart tighten. From the hallway, the doorbell rang. 2 short chimes. Ranger's ears shot up. Eli appeared almost instantly. That must be the officer I asked to drop something off. He went to the door. On the porch stood Officer Mark Delaney, a patrol deputy in his late 40s. Mark was a tall, lanky man with a slightly crooked posture from an old back injury he earned years ago during a winter rescue near Elk Ridge. His salt and pepper hair was buzzed short, and his sunken hazel eyes always carried a weary kindness, like someone who'd seen too much but still held on to hope by the fingertips. Morning, Rowan, Mark said, handing Eli a thick folder. Got the logs you asked for. Then he spotted Jenna and Maddie peeking down the hall. He gave a polite nod. New babysitter? Jenna flushed, opening her mouth to explain, but Eli stepped in quickly. Not a babysitter, he said firmly. She's helping Maddie with sensory needs. Mark raised a brow, surprised at Eli's tone, gentle but protective. Ah, good. Kid's lucky. Maddie peeked from behind Jenna. Hi, Officer Mark. Mark's face softened the way it always did around children. Hey there, superstar. Ranger behaving? Ranger barked indignantly. Mark chuckled. That's a no. After a brief exchange, he left with a friendly wave. Jenna glanced at Eli, noticing how he seemed slightly embarrassed. He's harmless, Eli said, rubbing the back of his neck. One of the few on the force who understands Maddie. He seems kind, Jenna responded. He is, Eli admitted. Life roughed him up, but it made him gentler, not harder. As the morning unfolded, Jenna observed Maddie's routines, her sensory preferences, her triggers, her patterns. She learned that Maddie hated the high whistle of the kettle, but loved the low hum of the dishwasher. That sudden touch startled her, but Ranger brushing past her brought comfort. That transitions needed warnings. In 5 minutes we'll, or after this, we will. She watched Eli too. How he kneeled when speaking to Maddie. How he softened his voice. How he held his breath whenever she became overstimulated, as though afraid to make the wrong move. At one point, while Maddie played in the quiet nook, Jenna approached him in the kitchen. You're doing a good job, she said gently. Eli looked stunned, as though the words were ones he'd never allowed himself to believe. I'm trying, he murmured. Some days I feel like I'm guessing. Jenna shook her head. No, you listen. That's the hardest part, and you love her more than anything. She feels that. Eli swallowed hard, emotion tightening his jaw. Ranger nudged his leg, sensing the shift. Thank you, Eli said, for saying that. It's true. The quiet moment stretched, warm and fragile. Then Maddie called for Jenna, and the moment dissolved, but not forgotten. Later that afternoon, Jenna accompanied Eli and Maddie on a short walk through the wooded trail behind their house. Snow dusted the pine needles, and the chilly air carried the smell of cedar and distant wood smoke. Maddie walked between them, holding Jenna's hand with a quiet ease. Ranger trotted ahead, tail high, occasionally glancing back as if counting his flock. Halfway through the trail, they encountered Mrs. Lorraine Whitcomb, a neighbor in her early 60s walking her elderly beagle, Pumpkin. Lorraine was a round, rosy-cheeked woman with curly gray hair and a thick wool scarf wrapped around her neck like a cocoon. She had a warm, overly enthusiastic manner, the type who baked pies for new neighbors and asked a few too many questions with the best intentions. Pumpkin, her beagle, was about 11 years old, with floppy ears, a stout body, and a slow but determined trot. The dog wagged its tail energetically despite its age. "Eli, Maddie!" Lorraine exclaimed. "And who is this lovely young woman with you?" Maddie immediately stepped behind Jenna, overwhelmed by Lorraine's energetic arrival. Jenna bent down to Maddie's level. "You okay?" Maddie nodded, clutching her sleeve. Jenna reassured her with a squeeze of the hand. Lorraine, recognizing the shift, softened her tone. "Sorry, sweetheart. Didn't mean to come on so strong." She then turned to Jenna. "You must be the helper Eli mentioned once. We're all so glad he finally found someone who understands Maddie." Eli looked embarrassed again. "Lorraine." "What?" Lorraine said, waving a hand. "It's true." Pumpkin sniffed Ranger, who accepted the greeting with dignified patience. After a short chat, Lorraine and Pumpkin continued down the trail, leaving the Rowan trio with quiet snow and bird calls. Maddie squeezed Jenna's hand. "I like when you talk for me," she whispered. "You don't make me feel wrong." Jenna's heart broke a little, in the best way. Back at the house, the afternoon light turned golden as they returned inside. Eli helped Maddie take off her boots, while Ranger shook snow from his coat with enough enthusiasm to scatter droplets across the room. Jenna laughed, Maddie giggled, and in the warmth of the Rowan home, Jenna felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of belonging beginning to take root. As the day ended, Eli walked Jenna to the door. "Thank you for today," he said, "for everything." Jenna smiled. "I'm glad I came. Will you come again tomorrow?" Eli asked, unable to hide the hope in his voice. Jenna nodded. "Yes, I will." And as she stepped off the porch, Ranger ran forward, nudging her hand once before returning to Eli's side, as if giving his blessing. The next morning unfolded beneath a silver sky, the kind Brightwood often wore before snowfall. The clouds hung low over the mountains, soft and swollen, as if waiting for permission to release flakes onto the pine forest below. A thin fog crawled along the ground, curling around fence posts and porch steps like pale smoke. Inside the Rowan house, warmth drifted from the kitchen, where Officer Eli Rowan was packing Maddie's lunch. He wore a dark flannel shirt rolled at the sleeves, revealing forearms marked by small scars, old signs of rescues, fights, and the rough edges of a life spent protecting others. Yet this morning, the toughest thing he faced was choosing between carrot slices or apple wedges for his daughter's lunchbox. He chose both. Maddie sat at the table swinging her legs gently. Ranger, the German shepherd, lay beside her like a guardian carved from living fur and loyalty. The 4-year-old dog slept with one eye half open, his instinct forever tuned to Maddie's needs. When the quiet knock came at the door, Ranger was up instantly, tail high, ears pricked. He trotted to the entryway, barked once, not alarmed, but announcing. Eli wiped his hands and opened the door. Jenna Carter stood on the porch, cheeks flushed pink from the cold, her braid tucked under a knitted beanie. She looked brighter today, rested, steadier, though small traces of uncertainty still lingered around her eyes like faint shadows. She carried a small backpack. "Good morning," she said, breath fogging in the air. "Morning," Eli replied, warmth slipping into his voice without permission. "You're early." "Wanted to help get her ready," Jenna said. "If that's okay?" "More than okay." Maddie came running immediately, pajamas still wrinkled, hair messy, smile wide. "Jenna!" The sound of her happiness filled the doorway like sunlight. Ranger circled Jenna, then nudged her hand decisively, as if escorting her inside where she belonged. Eli stepped aside to let her enter, then returned to the kitchen, where the counter was cluttered with fruit slices, stickers, a half-open thermos, and a dinosaur-shaped cookie cutter. "We're still figuring out mornings," Eli admitted, flustered. Jenna laughed softly. "This is cleaner than my mornings growing up." She set her backpack down and knelt beside Maddie. "Let's pick your outfit." Maddie nodded eagerly and led her down the hall. Eli watched them go, something warm expanding in his chest. In Maddie's bedroom, sunlight filtered through the curtains in soft golden stripes. Maddie pulled open her drawers, filled with leggings, soft fabric dresses, and sweaters that wouldn't irritate her skin. "I don't like tags," Maddie murmured. "Scratchy." Jenna smiled. "Me neither when I was little. We'll find something comfy." Together they picked a purple sweater and dark leggings. As Jenna helped Maddie dress, she noticed the girl's fingers tremble slightly. "You okay?" she asked gently. Maddie hesitated, then whispered, "School is loud." Jenna nodded. "Yes, it can be." "Will you stay?" Maddie looked up, hope trembling in her eyes. "For a little while?" Jenna softened. "If your dad says yes." Eli's voice drifted from the hallway. "Your dad absolutely says yes." Maddie beamed. Eli drove them to Brightwood Elementary in his dark SUV. Ranger insisted on riding along. He was off duty today, but he acted as though his real assignment was guarding Maddie. The school sat on a hill overlooking the valley, its brick walls warm against the pale winter light. Children played in the yard, shouting and running. The noise made Maddie curl into herself instinctively. She grabbed Jenna's hand tightly. This did not go unnoticed. Near the entrance stood Ms. Eleanor Briggs, the school's special education coordinator, a woman in her late 30s with wavy auburn hair tied in a bun and rectangular glasses perched on her nose. She had a calm presence, like someone who had found serenity in studying storms rather than running from them. She wore a charcoal cardigan and carried a clipboard tucked under her arm. Her green eyes sparked with curiosity when she saw Jenna. "You must be Maddie's new support specialist," Ms. Briggs said with a warm handshake. "I'm Eleanor. Everyone calls me Ellie." Jenna immediately noticed the faint tension under Ellie's calm surface, the kind shaped by years of advocating for children in a system that didn't always listen. Ellie had the bearing of someone who fought battles gently but fiercely. Ranger sniffed her shoes, then approved her with a quiet tail wag. "I've heard wonderful things about you," Ellie said to Jenna. "Officer Rowan said you were incredible yesterday." Jenna flushed. "I just helped her breathe." "Sometimes that's the most extraordinary thing someone can do." Maddie pressed into Jenna's side, overwhelmed by the noise of other children. Ellie crouched down to the girl's level. "Hi there, Maddie. I set aside a quiet space for you inside. Want to see it?" Maddie hesitated, then nodded. Jenna went with her. Inside the school, Ellie led them to a small room painted in soft pastels. Beanbags lined the floor, shelves held sensory tools, and the overhead lights had warm covers that softened the brightness. "This is wonderful," Jenna murmured. "I've been fighting for this room for 5 years," Ellie said with a wry smile. "Budget cuts kept winning the fight, but last spring, a kind donor stepped in." "Who?" Jenna asked. Ellie glanced toward the hallway where Eli stood speaking to the principal. "You can probably guess." Jenna's breath caught. She looked away, overwhelmed. While Maddie explored the quiet room, Ellie offered Jenna a cup of tea from her desk kettle. "You have a rare touch with her," Ellie said. "Some people teach calm, others are calm. I'm not always calm," Jenna admitted. "I just understand her." "Understanding is a form of love," Ellie replied gently. "And Maddie senses it." Jenna's eyes softened, and Ellie watched her with the perceptiveness of an educator who saw more than she said. "Be careful," Ellie warned quietly. "Not because you shouldn't care, but because those two, Maddie and Eli, they attach deeply. They love deeply. Losing people has hurt them before." Jenna swallowed, sensing the weight behind Ellie's words. "I'm not going anywhere," she said softly. Ellie nodded. "Then they'll bloom." When it was time for Jenna to leave, Maddie clung to her leg. "Come later," she whispered. Jenna knelt and kissed her forehead. "I promise." Ranger whined softly, nudging Jenna's hand. Eli walked her to the SUV. "Thank you," he said. "You made her whole morning easier." "She's strong," Jenna replied. "She just needs the world to meet her halfway." Eli held her gaze for a long, quiet moment. The wind brushed against them, lifting strands of Jenna's hair. Ranger sat between them, tail curled neatly, like a chaperone who approved but remained professional. "See you this afternoon?" Eli asked. "Yes," Jenna said simply. And as she walked back down the snowy path toward town, a strange warmth settled in her chest, a warmth that felt like purpose, belonging, and the first hint of something she was almost afraid to name. The snow came sooner than expected that afternoon, drifting down in soft spirals that wrapped Brightwood in a quiet white hush. The mountains disappeared behind a curtain of pale mist, and the pines bowed under the weight of settling flakes. By the time Jenna Carter walked back toward the Rowan house, the world felt softened, muted, like someone had lowered the volume on the entire landscape. She pulled her coat tighter around herself, the cold brushing her cheeks. The path leading to the Rowan home was lined with lantern-style porch lights, their glow warm against the falling snow. Through the windows, she could see shapes moving, small, quick steps that were unmistakably Maddie's, and beside them, the tall, steady outline of Officer Eli Rowan. Before Jenna could knock, the door swung open and Ranger, the 4-year-old German shepherd, barreled forward, tail sweeping wildly. His thick coat shook off flakes as he sniffed Jenna's hands, her coat, her backpack, as if ensuring she had truly returned and wasn't just a snowbound hallucination. Eli appeared behind him, breath fogging in the cold air. "You're right on time." His voice held warmth that could melt the first layer of frost from the heart of winter. Jenna smiled, stepping inside. The house smelled of tomato soup and garlic bread, simple, comforting scents that wrapped around her like a familiar embrace. Maddie dashed toward Jenna at full speed, stopping only when she remembered to slow down before colliding. Jenna knelt. "Hi, sweetheart." Maddie hugged her tightly, her small hands pressing into Jenna's coat. "I missed you," she whispered. "I missed you too." Eli stood quietly behind them, watching the moment with a mixture of gratitude and something deeper, something he was not yet ready to name, but no longer afraid to feel. Dinner was simple but warm. Maddie ate happily, the familiar textures calming her, while Ranger sat at her feet, waiting patiently for crumbs she might drop. After dinner, Maddie asked, "Can we do the calm stories?" It had become their new routine, Jenna guiding Maddie through imaginative stories built for emotional grounding and sensory comfort. Tonight's story involved Ranger as a brave woodland guardian who protected a kingdom of quiet creatures from storms too loud for them to bear. Maddie listened in rapt attention, twisting the hem of her sweater gently, breathing slow and steady. Eli watched from the armchair, his posture relaxed for the first time in days. When the story ended, Maddie yawned and curled against Jenna's arm. "You make the world less scary," she murmured, half asleep. Jenna's heart pulled. "You make the world sweeter," she whispered back. Eli stood and scooped Maddie into his arms. She nestled into his shoulder, already drifting. "Bedtime," he said softly. "Ranger, come." Ranger followed, though he turned his head back once, as if making sure Jenna was still there. She smiled at him. "I'm not going anywhere." And somehow, Ranger seemed to understand. 10 minutes later, after Eli tucked Maddie under her weighted blanket, he rejoined Jenna in the living room. The snow outside thickened, blurring the edges of the world, leaving only the warm glow of the room around them. Jenna sat on the couch, hands folded in her lap. Eli lowered himself into the seat beside her, close enough for warmth, far enough to be respectful. "She adores you," he said. "You bring out something in her I've never been able to reach." Jenna shook her head softly. "You reach her every day, in ways I never could." Eli let out a quiet breath and leaned back slightly. "I've always tried, but sometimes trying feels like guessing." "That's every parent," Jenna replied gently. "But you don't guess blindly. You listen, you adjust, you care. That's more than most." Eli swallowed, eyes drifting toward the snow-laced window. "Maddie and we've lost people. She lost her mother before she could remember her. I lost the woman I thought would walk through all of this with me." He paused. "When she died, there was a part of my heart that went with her. The rest belonged to Maddie, and for a long time, that was it. No room for anything else." Jenna stayed silent, giving him the space he needed. "Then you showed up," he said. And suddenly the house felt bigger, warmer. His voice softened to nearly a whisper. And Maddie wasn't the only one who could breathe easier. Jenna's breath caught. She looked down at her hands, then at him. "Eli," she began carefully, "I'm here for Maddie, for you both. But I don't want to confuse her, or hurt her, or make promises I can't keep." He nodded once. "I know. I'm not going anywhere," she continued, voice steady. "And I care about her. And you." Eli's eyes lifted to hers, slowly, knowingly. "I care about you too." Ranger, who had been lying by the fireplace, lifted his head and huffed softly as if approving. A sudden knock interrupted them. Eli stood immediately, instincts kicking in. Ranger barked sharply. When he opened the door, Harriet Lowell, Jenna's elderly neighbor, stood on the porch, wrapped in her green knitted shawl, snow dusting her hair. "Evening," Harriet said briskly. "Sorry to intrude, but Jenna forgot her mail, and I saw her walking this way." Harriet handed over a bundle of envelopes. "Also, young lady," she added, turning to Jenna with a pointed stare, "you left your porch light on, and you're out of coffee." Jenna blinked, torn between amusement and surprise. "Thank you, Harriet." Harriet softened, stepping inside just long enough to pat Jenna's cheek. "You're needed here," she murmured, eyes sharp despite her age. "Don't let fear make decisions for you." Then she hobbled back into the snowy night. Eli looked after her, stunned. "Your neighbor?" "Former. School teacher," Jenna said, "and professional life interferer." A laugh spilled out of both of them. Later, when Eli walked her to the door, the snow had eased into a gentle shimmer. Jenna stepped onto the porch, breath curling into the cold air. Eli stood a step behind her. "Jenna," he said quietly. "Yes?" "You don't just help Maddie regulate her world." His voice softened. "You help me regulate mine." She turned toward him. The moment hung between them, tender, unspoken, delicate as snowflakes that melted upon landing. Then Eli stepped back, giving her space. "See you tomorrow?" She smiled. "Yes, tomorrow." Ranger nudged her hand once more before she left, sealing the moment with his silent blessing. When Jenna walked down the path, the Rowan porch light glowed softly behind her, warm, steady, like a home choosing her back. In the quiet moments of this story, we are reminded that God still works his miracles through ordinary people. A gentle heart, a small act of courage, a hand reaching out at the right time. These are not coincidences. They are the whispers of God guiding us toward one another. Jenna, Eli, and little Maddie found hope not because the world suddenly became easy, but because someone chose kindness when it mattered most. And sometimes that is exactly how God moves in our everyday lives, not through thunder or fire, but through compassion, patience, and the courage to love. As you return to your own day, your home, your family, your worries, remember that God is still writing miracles in the smallest corners of your life. Hold them close, look for them, share them. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who might need a little light today. Leave a comment and tell us what lesson you carry with you. And if you believe in the gentle miracles God sends us, type Amen in the comments below. May God bless you, protect you, and fill your day with peace and kindness. Thank you for watching, and do not forget to like, subscribe, and stay with us for more stories of hope.